Rachel Martinez clutched the crumpled $20 bill in her jacket pocket as she walked through downtown Denver's bustling streets on this cold October evening. The autumn wind cut through her worn denim coat, but not as sharply as the harsh reality of her current financial situation. 3 days until rent was due, and this single bill represented everything she had left in the world. Her 8-year-old son Tommy waited at home in their small 2-bedroom apartment, probably doing his 3rd-grade homework, by the dim light of their old desk lamp, since she couldn't afford to replace the burned-out overhead bulb yet. She'd promised him McDonald's tonight, a rare treat they absolutely couldn't afford, but she'd said it anyway to see his face light up after another disappointing day. The job interview at Murphy's Diner had gone reasonably well earlier, but they wouldn't call back for several days, leaving her in this impossible limbo. Rachel stopped outside the large Safeway grocery store, her mind frantically calculating possibilities. White bread, generic peanut butter, maybe some milk if it was on sale. Just enough to stretch until her meager unemployment check arrived next week. The city's evening rush hour began swirling around her, business people in expensive suits hurrying past with their leather briefcases and designer coffee cups, their daily problems likely vastly different from her own desperate circumstances. She thought about Tommy's excited face when she'd mentioned dinner out, how his eyes had sparkled with anticipation. How could she possibly break another promise to the most important person in her world? The automatic glass doors of the store whooshed open invitingly, and a blast of heated air hit her tired face. Rachel took a deep, steadying breath, preparing herself for another evening of creative budgeting and gentle lies about why Mommy wasn't eating very much again. She stepped inside the brightly lit store, completely unaware that this seemingly ordinary Tuesday evening would fundamentally change everything about their lives. Sometimes the smallest acts of human kindness create the biggest ripples across the universe, and Rachel was about to discover just how profoundly true that ancient wisdom could be in ways she never could have imagined in her wildest dreams. Inside the warm, fluorescent-lit store, Rachel grabbed a small red plastic basket and headed straight for the marked-down clearance section at the back, where day-old bread and dented cans offered the best value for her extremely limited budget. She was mentally calculating prices and portions when something caught her peripheral vision. A small boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old, standing completely alone near the colorful snack aisle. His clothes looked undeniably expensive: designer jeans, a small North Face jacket, and pristine white sneakers that probably cost more than Rachel made in 2 weeks of substitute teaching. Yet despite his affluent appearance, he seemed utterly lost and frightened, his small shoulders shaking slightly. His perfectly styled dark hair framed a face streaked with tears, and his wide brown eyes darted nervously around the busy store. "Hey there, sweetie, are you okay?" Rachel approached him carefully, setting down her basket and kneeling to his eye level with the gentle manner that made her such an effective teacher. The boy looked up at her with those enormous, trusting eyes that reminded her so much of Tommy at that age. "I can't find my daddy anywhere," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the store's background music and shopping cart wheels. "We came here together to buy groceries, and I went to look at the toy aisle for just a few minutes, and now I can't find him anywhere in this whole big store." Rachel's well-developed maternal instincts kicked in immediately and powerfully. She looked around quickly for security guards or store employees who might help, but the nearest worker was busy helping another customer with a price check, and the security office seemed unmanned at the moment. "What's your name, honey?" she asked softly, her teacher voice automatically engaging. "Ethan," he sniffled, wiping his nose with the back of his small hand. "Ethan Williams. Do you think my daddy left without me? What if he doesn't want me anymore?" The pure vulnerability in his question broke Rachel's heart into pieces. She looked around once more at the busy evening shoppers, then made a decision that would alter the trajectory of multiple lives forever. "Oh, sweetie, I'm absolutely sure your daddy didn't leave you on purpose," Rachel said gently, placing a comforting hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes when we're worried about other things, but I promise you he's probably looking everywhere for you right now." She studied his pale, tear-stained face and noticed something else troubling. "Ethan, honey, when did you last have something to eat?" His small stomach answered with a loud, unmistakable growl that echoed in the aisle, and he looked embarrassed. "This morning, I think. Daddy had really important business meetings all day long, and we forgot about lunch completely." Rachel's heart shattered. Here was a child, obviously from a wealthy family based on his clothing and articulate speech, yet he was hungry and frightened and completely alone in this crowded store. She thought about her own precious $20 folded in her pocket, about Tommy waiting patiently at home for the dinner she'd promised, about the bills stacking up and the rent due in 3 days. Then she looked at Ethan's trusting face, saw the hope flickering in his brown eyes, and made her decision without any hesitation whatsoever. "Come on, sweetie, let's get you something good to eat right now," she said warmly, completely abandoning her small basket of budget groceries. She led the boy to the store's deli section, where they sold prepared foods, significantly more expensive than the clearance items she'd planned to purchase. But this child desperately needed real, nutritious food, not just cheap bread and peanut butter. "What would you like to have, Ethan?" she asked, studying the selection of hot foods under the warming lights. Ethan's entire face transformed as his eyes lit up at the sight of the appetizing hot food counter, displaying golden fried chicken, creamy macaroni and cheese, fresh mashed potatoes, and colorful vegetables. "Could I maybe have some of that chicken? And some of the mac and cheese, too?" The total came to exactly $12.50, more than half of Rachel's entire remaining money. She didn't hesitate for even a single second. "2 containers, please," she told the friendly deli worker with a genuine smile, knowing she was making the right choice despite her desperate circumstances. They found a small table near the front of the store where Ethan could easily watch for his father while eating. Rachel observed him carefully as he ate, noting how he seemed to genuinely savor every single bite, as if he hadn't experienced home-cooked comfort food in quite some time. His proper table manners suggested good upbringing, but there was an underlying loneliness that tugged at her heart. "This is really, really good," he said enthusiastically between careful mouthfuls. "My nanny usually prepares all my meals, but she's been sick for the past week, so Daddy and I have been eating a lot of takeout and restaurant food." "Where do you live, Ethan?" Rachel asked gently, still scanning the store entrance for any sign of a frantic parent searching for their missing child. "In the really big house up on Cherry Creek Drive. Daddy says it's probably too big for just the 2 of us, but it's been our home since Mommy went to heaven 2 years ago." The simple, matter-of-fact way he mentioned his mother's death made Rachel's throat tighten with emotion. Wealthy or not, this little boy was dealing with profound loss and daily loneliness that no amount of money could possibly fix or heal. She thought about calling the police immediately, but something deep in her maternal instincts made her want to wait a bit longer and try other options first. "Tell me about your daddy, sweetie," she said softly, genuinely interested in understanding their family situation. "He works constantly at his big office downtown. He creates really complicated computer programs for hospitals that help doctors take care of sick people. Everyone says he's incredibly smart, but sometimes he gets so focused on work that he forgets about regular things like eating meals or sleeping enough." The pieces of their story were beginning to come together in Rachel's mind, painting a clear picture of a highly successful but overwhelmed single father struggling to balance an demanding career with the complex needs of raising a grieving child alone. 25 minutes had passed, and still no sign of his father anywhere in the store. Rachel had used the customer service phone to have the store manager make 2 separate announcements over the intercom system, but nobody had come forward to claim the lost boy. The store's security guard had been notified and was supposedly checking the parking lot, but Rachel was growing increasingly concerned about the situation. "We should probably call the police now," she told Ethan as gently as possible, not wanting to frighten him further. "They have special training to help us find your daddy quickly and safely." Ethan's small face immediately crumpled with fresh tears. What if he really did leave me here on purpose? What if he decided he doesn't want me anymore because I'm too much trouble and he's too busy with his important work? The raw pain and abandonment fear in his voice pierced Rachel's heart like a knife. She pulled the trembling boy close to her side, feeling his small body shake with suppressed sobs. "Oh, honey, I'm absolutely certain that's not true. Sometimes adults make mistakes when we're stressed or overwhelmed, but that doesn't mean we stop loving our children. I bet your daddy is searching everywhere for you right now, and he's probably scared too." Her phone buzzed with a text message from Tommy asking when she would be coming home with their promised dinner. She had exactly $7 and change remaining, and she still needed to feed her own son tonight. The crushing weight of her financial situation pressed down on her shoulders like a heavy blanket, but looking at Ethan's frightened, tear-streaked face, she knew with absolute certainty that she couldn't abandon this vulnerable child. regardless of her own desperate circumstances. "Tell you what," she said, making another impulsive decision that would change everything. "Why don't you come home with me for a little while? We can keep trying to reach your daddy from there, and you can meet my son Tommy. He's just about your age, and I think you two would really like each other." Ethan nodded eagerly through his tears. "Really? You'd actually do that for me?" Rachel smiled warmly despite all her worries. "Of course, sweetie. That's what people do for each other when someone needs help." Meanwhile, 15 miles across the city in his impressive glass-walled corner office on the 32nd floor, overlooking downtown Denver's glittering skyline, tech mogul David Williams was experiencing the worst panic of his entire life. He had systematically turned his entire company staff into an impromptu search party after the devastating realization that his son Ethan wasn't waiting patiently in the store's toy section where he'd left him 45 minutes earlier. The store's security footage clearly showed Ethan wandering the aisles alone, looking increasingly confused and frightened, but then the cameras mysteriously lost track of him somewhere near the front of the store. David's highly efficient assistant Jennifer had already contacted the Denver Police Department, store management, mall security, and even hired the city's most reputable private investigator to begin an immediate search. "Sir, we've systematically checked every single store, restaurant, and business establishment within a 5-mile radius of the original location," Jennifer reported with professional calm that barely concealed her own worry. "The police have issued an official Amber Alert, and local news stations are preparing to broadcast Ethan's photo within the hour." David ran his hands frantically through his dark hair, the same rich shade as his missing son's, feeling utterly helpless despite commanding a technology empire worth over $1 billion. Since losing his beloved wife Emma to an aggressive form of cancer 2 devastating years ago, 6-year-old Ethan had literally become everything meaningful in his world. His massively successful company, his luxurious mansion, his expensive cars, his stock portfolio, none of it mattered at all if he couldn't protect the one person who truly mattered most. The cruel irony wasn't lost on him. He could track data transmissions across multiple continents in real time, monitor server performance in dozens of countries simultaneously, but he'd somehow managed to lose track of his own precious child in a simple neighborhood grocery store. His phone displayed 17 missed calls and dozens of urgent text messages from concerned friends, family members, and business associates who had heard about the Amber Alert. Among all the worried messages flooding his phone, 3 voicemails from an unknown local Denver number caught his immediate attention. David's hands trembled slightly as he played the first message. "Mr. Williams, this is Rachel Martinez calling. I have your son Ethan here with me at my home. He's completely safe and has been fed a good meal. Please call me back at this number as soon as you get this message." David's knees nearly buckled with relief so overwhelming it was almost physical. He immediately dialed the number with shaking fingers, and it rang only once before a warm, concerned woman's voice answered professionally. "Hello, this is Rachel. Ms. Martinez, this is David Williams. You said you have my son Ethan with you." His voice cracked slightly with emotion. "Yes, Mr. Williams, thank goodness you called back. Ethan is perfectly safe and sound. He was lost and alone in the Safeway on Colorado Boulevard, and he hadn't eaten anything since this morning, so I brought him to my home to keep him safe and fed while we tried to reach you." David closed his eyes tightly, feeling 2 full years of accumulated stress, and today's absolute terror beginning to slowly lift from his shoulders like a heavy weight. "Is he really okay? Is he hurt or scared?" "He's doing wonderfully now. He's playing video games with my 8-year-old son Tommy, and they're getting along like old friends. But Mr. Williams, I have to ask, he was very frightened and extremely hungry when I found him. How long had he been alone in the store?" The gentle but unmistakable criticism in Rachel's voice stung deeply because David knew it was completely deserved. "I got caught up in an emergency conference call with our Tokyo office. I told him to look at the toys for just a few minutes while I took the call, but it ran much longer than expected," and he trailed off, realizing how completely inadequate and irresponsible it sounded when spoken aloud. "Where are you located? I'm coming to get him immediately." Rachel provided her address, and David was surprised to recognize the neighborhood. Not dangerous by any means, but definitely not affluent either. "Mr. Williams, I hope you don't mind me asking, but has Ethan eaten anything substantial today? He seemed genuinely hungry, not just wanting snacks." David felt another sharp stab of parental guilt pierce his chest. We had breakfast together this morning, but I had 3 back-to-back video conferences with our international offices, and I completely forgot about lunch. God, I'm such a terrible father. David's sleek black Tesla Model S looked distinctly and almost embarrassingly out of place, parked outside Rachel's modest apartment complex in the working-class neighborhood. The building was older, but well-maintained, with small balconies and children's bikes scattered in the courtyard. He knocked on the door with nervous anticipation, his heart racing with a mixture of relief, anxiety, and curiosity about the woman who had rescued his son. When Rachel opened the door, David was immediately struck by her genuine warmth and the obvious intelligence and compassion in her expressive brown eyes. She appeared to be in her early 30s, with shoulder-length dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and an easy, natural smile that somehow managed to convey both kindness and strength, despite the obvious fatigue in her features. She was clearly beautiful, but in an understated, authentic way that had nothing to do with expensive makeup or designer clothing. "Mr. Williams, please come in," she said warmly, stepping aside to let him enter her small but impeccably clean living space. "Daddy!" Ethan launched himself across the small living room and into David's arms like a missile, and for a perfect moment, absolutely nothing else in the entire world mattered. David held his son as tightly as he dared, breathing in his familiar scent of children's shampoo and that indefinable sweetness that kids always seem to carry with them. "I was so incredibly scared, buddy. I'm so very sorry I lost track of you." "It's okay, Daddy. Rachel took really good care of me, and Tommy has the coolest old Nintendo game system you've ever seen in your whole life." David looked up to see another boy about Ethan's age, hanging back somewhat shyly near the couch, clearly curious but respectful of the emotional reunion taking place. The boy had the same warm brown eyes as his mother, and an open, friendly face that immediately put people at ease. "You must be Tommy," David said formally, extending his hand in greeting. Tommy stepped forward and shook it solemnly. "Yes, sir. Ethan's really nice. He shared his cookies with me even though I already had my dinner." David looked around the small but spotlessly clean apartment, taking in telling details. The carefully mended second-hand furniture, children's homework spread across a kitchen table that clearly served multiple purposes, and bills that Rachel had tried to tuck discreetly behind a ceramic fruit bowl. The contrast between this warm, lived-in apartment and David's own sprawling mansion was stark and thought-provoking, yet this modest place radiated something his expensive house often lacked: genuine warmth and authentic family connection. David could see evidence of Rachel's care everywhere: handmade curtains, Tommy's artwork carefully displayed on the refrigerator, plants thriving on the windowsill despite the obvious financial constraints. "Ms. Martinez, I truly cannot thank you enough," David began earnestly. "Please call me Rachel," she said, gesturing for him to sit at the small kitchen table. "Can I get you some coffee? It's nothing fancy, just regular grocery store brand." David accepted gratefully, studying this remarkable woman who had shown his son such extraordinary kindness. As they talked, he learned about her challenging situation. Recently divorced after her ex-husband abandoned them for a younger woman, struggling to find steady employment, raising Tommy alone while fighting to maintain their small apartment and basic necessities. "I had a job interview today at Murphy's Diner downtown," Rachel mentioned casually, as if discussing the weather. "Fingers crossed they call back soon. The tips there are supposed to be decent, especially during the lunch rush." "What kind of work are you ideally looking for?" David asked, genuinely curious and increasingly impressed by her resilience and positive attitude, despite obviously difficult circumstances. "Anything that pays the bills, really. I have a bachelor's degree in elementary education from the University of Colorado, but full-time teaching positions are incredibly scarce in this district. I've been doing substitute teaching when available and waiting tables at various restaurants to make ends meet." David filed this information away carefully, an idea beginning to form in his business-oriented mind. Meanwhile, the two boys had become instant friends, chattering enthusiastically about school, video games, favorite foods, and their shared love of adventure movies. "Ethan doesn't have many friends his own age," David admitted quietly, watching his son laugh with genuine joy for the first time in weeks. "Between his exclusive private school schedule and my demanding work commitments, he doesn't get nearly enough social interaction with other children." "Tommy would absolutely love to have a play date sometime," Rachel offered warmly. "They seem to have really connected, and it's wonderful to see both of them so happy." David watched his son laugh, really, truly laugh, and realized how rare that sound had become in their household. David pulled out his expensive leather checkbook, but Rachel immediately and firmly shook her head before he could even open it. "I absolutely don't want money, Mr. Williams. I did what any decent parent would do in the same situation. But you spent your own money to feed him, and you brought him into your home when he was frightened and alone. It was $20 and a safe place to stay until you could pick him up. Really, it was nothing special." David stared at her in complete amazement. $20. He regularly spent more than that amount on his daily Starbucks order, yet she had willingly shared what was clearly a significant portion of her limited resources with his son, a complete stranger. The profound generosity and selflessness of her actions hit him like a physical blow. "Rachel, I have a business proposition for you," David said slowly, his mind racing with possibilities. "My company, Williams Tech Solutions, is currently expanding our educational software division, and we desperately need someone with real classroom teaching experience to help develop age-appropriate programs for elementary-aged children." Rachel's eyes widened with surprise and cautious hope. What exactly would that position involve?" "Working directly with our software development team to ensure our educational applications are pedagogically sound, age-appropriate, and genuinely effective for real students in actual classroom settings. It would be a full-time position with excellent benefits, comprehensive health insurance, and honestly, based on what I've observed today, you'd be absolutely perfect for this role." "Mr. Williams, I really appreciate the generous offer, but I hope you're not just trying to find a way to pay me back for today." David leaned forward earnestly, his business instincts fully engaged now. "This isn't charity or some misguided attempt at repayment, Rachel. Look at how you've handled my son today. You immediately understood exactly what he needed emotionally and physically. You made him feel safe and cared for in a crisis situation, and you demonstrated exactly the kind of practical wisdom and genuine empathy we've been searching for. That's not just natural kindness, that's professional skill combined with authentic caring. Your educational background gives you precisely the qualifications we need." Rachel glanced at Tommy, who was still playing happily with Ethan, then back at David with cautious optimism. What would the salary range be for this position? David named a figure that made Rachel's eyes widen dramatically and her hand fly to cover her mouth in shock. The salary David mentioned was more than triple what Rachel had been making from all her various part-time jobs combined. It represented true financial stability, comprehensive benefits, and the ability to provide Tommy with opportunities and security she'd only dared to dream about during their most difficult nights. I need some time to think about this incredible offer," Rachel said, her voice barely above a whisper as she tried to process the magnitude of this unexpected opportunity. "Of course. Take all the time you need. But Rachel, I want you to understand that this offer stands completely regardless of what happened today. Take a week, take 2 weeks, whatever you need to feel comfortable with the decision." David stood to leave, gathering Ethan's jacket and backpack. "Can Tommy come visit our house sometime soon?" Ethan asked hopefully, his face bright with excitement. "I really want to show him my room and my computer and all the cool stuff in our backyard." "If it's okay with his mum," David replied, then looked directly at Rachel with genuine warmth. "You're both welcome at our home anytime. Our house is, well, it's quite large and honestly pretty empty most days. It would be wonderful to hear children's laughter filling those rooms again." There was a vulnerability and loneliness in his admission that touched Rachel's heart deeply. "I think we'd really like that," she said softly, meaning every word. After they left, Rachel sat at her small kitchen table, staring at David's elegant business card with its embossed logo and premium paper. Tommy climbed onto her lap, sensing the importance of the moment. "Mom, are we going to be okay now?" he asked, the question that had been underlying all their conversations for months. Rachel hugged him tightly, feeling hope bloom in her chest for the first time in years. "Yes, baby. I think we're going to be much more than okay." That evening, after putting Tommy to bed with promises of exciting changes ahead, she called the number on the business card. "David Williams speaking." "Mr. Williams, it's Rachel. If the offer still stands, I would be honored to accept the position." "It absolutely still stands, and we're thrilled to have you join our team. Welcome to Williams Tech Solutions, Rachel." The genuine relief and happiness in his voice was unmistakable, And Rachel realized this new beginning might change more than just their financial situation. 1 year later, Rachel and David stood in the exact same grocery store aisle where she had first encountered a lost and hungry Ethan. This time, they were shopping together as a family for ingredients to celebrate a remarkable milestone. Williams Tech's educational division had just won a prestigious national contract with school districts across 12 states, thanks largely to the innovative programs Rachel had helped develop. Her intuitive understanding of how children learn, combined with cutting-edge technology, had created educational tools that were revolutionizing classroom instruction nationwide. "I still can't believe you only had $20 that day," David said, shaking his head in amazement as he pushed their shopping cart. "Best investment I ever made," Rachel replied with a radiant smile, watching Tommy and Ethan compare different breakfast cereals, like the brothers they had essentially become over the past year. The boys were inseparable now, moving easily between Rachel's cozy apartment, which she'd kept as a home office, and David's mansion, which had indeed transformed into a real home, filled with laughter, family dinners, and the joyful chaos of childhood. 6 months earlier, David had proposed not with grand romantic gestures or expensive diamond rings, but with a simple, heartfelt question asked while they watched the boys build an elaborate fort in his backyard. "Want to make this official and become a real family?" The intimate wedding ceremony had been perfect, attended by their close friends from Williams Tech and a few family members, followed by a honeymoon in Colorado's mountains while the boys stayed with David's parents. "You know what the best part of this whole incredible journey has been?" David asked as they headed toward the checkout, their cart filled with ingredients for a celebration dinner. "What's that?" Rachel replied, intertwining her fingers with his. "Ethan has never been lost since that day. None of us have been lost anymore." Rachel squeezed his hand tightly, thinking about the remarkable year that had started with $20 and a hungry, frightened child. Sometimes the smallest acts of genuine kindness create the most profound changes in multiple lives, and sometimes the most beautiful families are the ones you choose to build together, one caring moment at a time, with love, patience, and unwavering commitment to each other's happiness and growth.